If you're trying to bring some gamification into your training, but you're getting some pushback, it might be because of some rampant misconceptions about gamification. Not only do they get in the way of adopting gamification, they can even prevent you from using it effectively. So in this video, we're debunking some of the most insidious myths about gamification, and this will help you break through some of the resistance you may be facing, but it'll also make your gamified training programs more effective. Myth number 1, and my personal pet peeve, gamification equals badges. This has got to be the one that I run into the most, and that's unfortunate because I think it's quite a damaging one, not to mention super annoying. Not a week goes by that I don't encounter someone who suggests that we take a non-gamified process, slap some badges on it, and boom, gamified. Badges are cheap and easy to implement, so they're everywhere, and they're usually used in a way that's not super effective at boosting learning outcomes. Badges should be thought of as a stamp that confirms the user's completed something, like a little extra thumbs up once the job is done. But often they're used as the incentive, the carrot to get you to do something. See, if you finish a task and you get a badge, it may be a nice surprise, but it's not the reason why you did it in the first place. And if the next task isn't one that you feel you need to do or should do or want to do, then the fact that there's a badge at the end of it isn't going to be enough of an incentive to get you to do it, especially if it's dull or tedious or hard. You need a stronger motivation than just a badge. Now, in case you love badges and I'm hurting your feelings right now, let me at least say this. First, there are ways of implementing badges so that they do impact learner behavior. And second, if you do implement them, they probably won't hurt your program. They more often hurt the credibility of gamification since they promise the engagement of games without actually delivering much. So I'm not saying stay away from badges, but I am saying that badges are not necessary for a program to be gamified, and by themselves, they're often not enough to really transform behavior. So use them if you love them, but just have the right expectations. Myth number 2, gamification is more appropriate for younger demographics. This is the idea that if your audience is older or more conservative, then they won't take to gamified training. And it comes from 2 stereotypes that we really need to update. First is the notion that a gamer is a 14-year-old boy somewhere in a basement in Wisconsin. That's the stereotype of a gamer, but the numbers actually tell a very different story. For example, adult women play video games at almost twice the rate that boys under 18 do, and the average age of a gamer is 40, not 14. Plus, older people are adopting games at an incredible rate. In fact, one of the fastest growing groups of gamers is women above the age of 55. Now, this may seem counterintuitive, but it's partly due to the spread of smartphones and also to the rise of Facebook games. Those 2 factors have really gotten a lot of people who didn't think of themselves as gamers to pick up and start playing. So that's the stereotype about gamers, but there's also a stereotype about the games themselves. When we think about video games, we often think of the hardcore mainstream ones, a lot of which are shooters like Call of Duty, GTA, Fortnite, etc. That's what we think of, but those aren't actually the games that people are playing the most. The most popular digital games in the world are casual games. These are your match 3s, your puzzle solvers, card games, mystery adventures, and so on. These actually make up 71% of all the digital games played on the planet. Not the hardcore games, these casual games. What this has to do with training is that training games have a lot to learn from casual games. Casual games are incredibly easy to pick up, they have simple interfaces, they're very intuitive. Non-gamers pick them up and they know exactly what to do. And since training games are often intended to be played by anyone, a lot of the time they should be applying the same design principles as the casual games. Because unless you're making a simulator of something complex like surgery or driving a car, you don't need an intimidating control scheme with 25 buttons, 2.5 buttons per finger. All you need is a simple point-and-click interface and a fingertip to tap with. Bottom line is, most people who play games don't look like the stereotypical gamer, and the games they play don't look like the stereotypical games. So the idea that if your audience is older or if they're not hardcore gamers, then they won't want to participate in gamified training, if that was ever true, now is very much an outdated notion. Myth number 3, the goal of gamification is to make learning fun. There's nothing wrong with fun. Fun is great, but focusing on the fun as the goal of gamification can actually lead to bad decisions. As you know, all training has learning objectives, and these in turn are tied to the organization's goals, whether it's safer working conditions, more sales, fewer mistakes. Your training aims at that. And by leveraging game mechanics in your training, your goal is to make your training even more successful at reaching those objectives. Fun is a central part of that, but it's not the end goal. It's the method, the tool we use to accelerate learners towards meeting those objectives. And thinking of the fun as a tool rather than the goal will make your gamified training program better. Because when you're building a game and you're designing your game mechanics, it's easy to get sidetracked and include mechanics for the wrong reasons. If you see fun as an end goal, there are situations where it can actually compete with your learning objective. For example, say I'm teaching a class about chess. That would never happen because I suck at chess. But say in my class, I've designed a game where people are presented with a given chessboard configuration and they have to find the best next move, and they have 5 seconds to do it. And I find that people get really excited about this, and it leads to a lot of engagement in the class, and people are cheering, and that's great. But if one of the messages I'm trying to get across in my course is that in chess, you should take a step back and analyze the whole situation and take your time before you make your move, then that 5-second time limit is actually at odds with my message. So in that case, my job as a designer is to find another game mechanic that's engaging, but that's in line with my message. And that's why ideally in gamification, your choice of game mechanics should be driven by the content and the messages you want to impart to the learners. If you're clear that the purpose of your gamified training program is to achieve your learning objectives, then every game design decision you make will be in line with that end result, and your training will be that much more effective. Myth number 4, gamified programs look gamey. You'll occasionally come across programs that are said to be gamified, but when you give them a second look, you realize they're really non-gamified training that's been made to look like a game. For example, an avatar will have been added to it, or the content will be delivered by a cartoon character. If you've seen my video about what gamification is and isn't, then you know that those programs don't really leverage game mechanics, and their gamification isn't likely to have much of an impact on learning outcomes. Like I said in that video, it's not wrong to use those elements, but again, you have to have the right expectations. So, all that glitters is not gamified, but what's useful to know here is that the reverse is also true. Not all gamified programs necessarily need to glitter. They don't all need to look like a game. There are gamified training programs and even straight up games that don't look anything like games. But under the hood, their designers have taken the time to turn the content into interesting puzzles to really captivate the learner, even though they don't look anything like a game. In fact, I've spent an embarrassing amount of time playing GeoGuessr, where you're dropped somewhere in Google Street View and you have to figure out where in the world you are as closely as you can. Now that doesn't look very gamey, but it's super fun and I learned a ton. And that's a really important thing to remember if you think your client might be turned off by gamey looking graphics. If that's the case, you can still leverage game mechanics to boost your training's effectiveness. It might not look like a game and the learner might not know why, but they'll just feel compelled to do another exercise. Which brings us to the final myth. Gamification trivializes the subject. That is, some topics are too important and serious to be gamified. This comes from the idea that to gamify something is to make light of it. But I've frequently made training games for doctors where they learn how to diagnose and treat cancer, or programs about workplace safety, mental health, safe food preparation, etc. And none of these are trivial topics. In fact, they can all be life and death. If you run into this block, remember that if someone thinks of gamification as primarily about making a situation fun, then it's totally understandable that they think important subjects like that shouldn't be a party. But since it's actually about meeting learning objectives in the most optimal way possible, then it makes total sense to use it when learners really have to hone the sharpest reflexes and really know their stuff. And if you're thinking, yes, I know this, but my clients don't, and they'll still be turned off by using a game for their serious content, then my advice is to go back and watch what I said about myth number 4. Not all gamification has to look gamey. You can dress down your game mechanics to make them look serious and beige to your client's heart's content, and still design a program that captivates the learner's attention and compels them to persevere. So there you have it. Those are some of the top myths about gamification that I run into. What about you? Which one do you run into the most in your job? Did it make the list, or is it something else? Let me know in the comments below. I'm curious. And remember, likes are free, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Our ways of implementing badges so that they do impact. Our ways of implementing